Welcome to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball. Guaranteed to start arguments, not end them. In this episode, it's the top player at each of the 9 positions in the 90s. 9 players, 1 decade, Prime 9. There were some incredible single-season achievements in the 1990s. Pedro Martinez had one of the best pitching years of all time in '99.
Swung on and missed, strike 3.
Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn hit .394 in '94, the highest batting average since Ted Williams hit .406, and a trio of superstar shortstops all debuted in this decade as well.
That kid is something.
But did any of them make our all-'90s team? Quite frankly, no. For this list is all about sustained success throughout the decade. So let's begin with the greatest right fielder of the 90s, number 9 in your scorebook on Prime 9.
There's only a handful of 5'2" players that have ever played the game. And I would sit here and argue that Larry Walker was one of the 5'2" players.
Good-looking young player is Larry Walker.
Larry Walker really presents his first stamp on the game in 1992.
Larry Walker, who's been all-everything for the Expos this year.
Is elected to his first All-Star game.
From the Montreal Expos, Larry Walker.
Wins his first Silver Slugger and his first Gold Glove.
What a play by Larry Walker.
If you're playing against Larry Walker, the first thing that's said is, okay, we're not running on Walker because he's going to throw you out.
Larry Walker has a cannon for an iron.
He had a league-high 44 doubles in '94.
Larry Walker delivers an RBI double.
And led his Expos to the best record in baseball.
A long ways to right, and this ball game is over.
If Larry Walker is an exceptional all-around 5-tool talent in Montreal, when he goes to Colorado, he turns into an otherworldly ball player.
Walker elevated his game in the mile-high air as balls just flew off his bat.
I call him Larry Legend. And when he came up, you knew something special was going to happen.
Deep right field, forget about it! And he's in there with a double! Kiss it goodbye!
Everybody was so amazed by his offense that he went out there and put up some incredible numbers.
He reached historic heights and will be remembered as one of the finest in National League history.
The '97 MVP had 409 total bases, the most by any player in almost 4 decades.
He is so hot right now, there's not a pitch that he cannot handle.
Larry Walker, the National League's most valuable player.
All Larry did next was win batting titles in both 1998 and '99. It was a 3-year stretch that all but defied belief.
That run from 1997 to 1999 elevated Walker to a status in which he was just an exceptional talent.
It's 1990 in Yankee Stadium.
Junior was out there playing center field, and Jesse Barfield hit what was going to be another home run.
Fly ball into deep left center field. Griffey leaps high in the air, and he's got it! An incredible catch by the kid!
That's why we call him the kid, because he could take a major league adult moment and make you think you're playing Little League ball when actually you're playing in Yankee Stadium.
Holy smoke!
It was the beginning of what would become the legacy of Ken Griffey Jr.
Always smooth, often spectacular, Griffey was a revelation on defense.
Will he get there? He does! What a catch by Ken Griffey!
He took such great pride in his defense. There wasn't a ball that went in the air that he didn't think he could catch.
There is no way a human being gets to that ball!
And with a strong throwing arm for a center fielder, which is an attribute you don't often see. But he also brought power back to the center field position.
Did he ever? Evoking memories of Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. Griffey's 382 home runs were the second most in the decade.
What a bolt by Junior! You are unbelievable!
Of his then career-high 45 home runs in '93, 8 of them put him in the record books.
Well, Dale Long and Don Mattingly have been joined tonight by Ken Griffey Jr. Home runs in 8 consecutive ball games.
Toward the end of the decade, Junior had a season so phenomenal, it was worth repeating.
In 1997, he had 56 homers and 147 RBIs.
Ken Griffey Jr. has his 56th.
Next year, he had 56 homers and 146 RBIs.
Junior with 6.
Ken was picked to 10 straight All-Star teams in the 90s and earned a spot among the century's best.
The youngest all-century player, Ken Griffey Jr.
And that's just another example of this guy is just another class, man. He's in a whole nother level.
Number 7. 7 is also how many MVP awards Barry Bonds would win in his career. And 1990 would be his first.
Bonds having an MVP season.
This guy was probably the most complete player in all of baseball. 30 home runs and steal 30 bags.
The second player in Major League history ever to hit 30 and steal 50 in a season.
That was kind of the rise in power-hitting guys that were able to take advantage and steal 30 bases a year.
Barry won 7 Silver Slugger awards in the 90s and 8 Gold Gloves. He earned his second MVP award in '92.
And that might just be the icing.
And led the Pirates to their 3rd straight postseason appearance.
3 times, boy.
1 year later, he was in San Francisco.
It's like a boyhood dream that comes true for me.
Home run, Barry Bonds. First at bat before the new hometown fans.
He had a giant impact right from the start, capturing his decade-best 3rd MVP award.
He had a combination of great discipline at the plate, hitting for average, hitting for power. He had the whole package.
You may never see it again in your lifetime. An incredible season of heroics by one man.
There was an aura of invincibility to Bonds in the 90s. He was going to get you one way or another.
I hated to see him come up to the plate because you knew that he was that good. If you walk him, he was going to steal.
And in 1997, he both homered and stole his way into the record books.
And that is the 5th season now, and Barry Bonds had 30 homers and 30 steals.
Those numbers kept adding up, and 1 year later, he created his own club.
The first man in the history of the game to hit 400 home runs and steal 400 bases.
Barry Bonds could beat you with his mind, he could beat you with his legs, he could beat you with his arm, and certainly his bat. And there was nobody during the course of the time that he was playing that could touch him on a baseball field.
Shortstop Barry Larkin kicked off the 90s by leading his Reds to a title.
Cincinnati, the champions of baseball.
Lark really took it to another level of defense and offense. I think he became a shortstop we hadn't seen ever in baseball.
Barry was at the forefront of an evolving breed of shortstop.
I think the thing that impressed you about Barry Larkin was that he was a shortstop that was very athletic, had a lot of range.
Barry Larkin comes up with a gem.
Good with his backhand, good going up the middle, got rid of the ball well.
Larkin, can he get it? Can he? He does.
He was one of those special players that when they talk about a 5-tool player, that's what Barry was.
And one of his tools was his bat.
Offensively, Barry was a great player, and you put him in the middle of that lineup that they had there in Cincinnati for some years, and you know he was the guy that you worried about.
Barry Larkin got what he wanted.
He was a guy who, if you need him to, could hit for power and drive in runs.
Larkin hits this pretty good to left center. It's gonna be gone.
The 90s was a showcase for Barry's power and speed, and silver adorned his trophy case.
Barry Larkin won more Silver Sluggers than any other player at his position. He had to be pretty good.
He was brilliant in '95 when he became the first NL shortstop to be named MVP in 33 years. 1 year later, he made history again.
One of his greatest seasons, no doubt, was 1996 when he became the first shortstop to join the 30-30 club.
He's the first 30-30 shortstop in the history of Major League Baseball.
I just remember walking off the field. It's like no shortstop had done it through the history of the game. It was just absolutely amazing.
And it couldn't come to a classier man.
Classy, talented, and the very best.
Barry Larkin, to me, is a Hall of Fame shortstop, and I really believe he revolutionized that position as far as being a great hitter and a great fielder.
That's why they call him one of the best in the business.
Number 5. Our selection at third might come as a surprise, but you can't ignore Robin Ventura's stellar defense and big bat.
That ball hit deep to right field. You can't put it on the board. Home run, Robin Ventura.
He was a remarkably consistent hitter, and he was the defensive third baseman of that era.
Robin was the best third baseman in the 1990s, and a man his owner loved to watch play.
Robin Ventura was one of my all-time favorite players. He's known as an offensive player, but he was a Gold Glove third baseman.
He won 6 of them, in fact, and had a knack for the spectacular.
Gets up, throws out Henderson. Robbins there, makes the catch.
Wow, what a play by the Sox third baseman Robin Ventura.
Robin also had a penchant for coming up big when the bases were jammed.
Ball hit deep, stay fair. Way back. A grand slam home run for Robin Ventura.
Robin hit 13 grand slams in the 90s, 2 of them back-to-back.
There it is, and there it goes. Way back on. Another grand slam. His second in 2 innings.
He also doubled up in 1999, clearing the bases in both games of a doubleheader.
And the pitch on the way. High fly ball. 2 grand slams in 1 day.
All those slams helped Robin post the 3rd most home runs and total bases and the 2nd most RBIs for third baseman in the 90s. And his most famous grand slam was never recorded as one because Robin never got to home plate.
A drive to right. Have you ever seen anything like this? He's got to circle the bases for his grand slam to be official.
Although Robin didn't get that slam, he did make his mark as part of one of the greatest defensive infields of all time.
1999 was the best infield that I ever had in my career.
One that finished with a phenomenal .992 fielding percentage.
This infield, they are superb.
Thanks in great part to our third baseman of the 90s. Roberto Alomar played for 4 different teams in the 90s, a 2-nation journey that began out west.
When I came over to San Diego in 1990, I really hadn't known too much about Robbie.
Roberto Alomar, just 21 years old.
Roberto was an all-star that year, his first of 12 straight. But soon, both he and Carter were traded to Toronto.
Being traded with him in '91 to the Toronto Blue Jays, I say, okay, I can believe you guys traded me. I cannot believe you traded Robbie Alomar.
What a play by Alomar.
Try to shovel it. He did for a great play.
Roberto led Toronto to the postseason in '92, where he delivered.
The biggest hit in Toronto Blue Jays history was the home run he hit off of Dennis Eckersley.
And a drive hit to right field. Sierra going back, looking up, and this game is tied. Roberto Alomar.
That hit there signaled that the Toronto Blue Jays can win the big game.
He was the LCS MVP that year and helped the Blue Jays earn back-to-back titles in '92 and '3. Alomar was one of the most acrobatic second basemen of all time, amazing his teammates at every stop.
Greatest player I've ever seen, hands down. I mean, offensively, defensively, he could really do whatever he wanted.
The right side by a diving Alomar. No, he gets it, throws him out. What a play by Alomar.
Once you throw Robbie out there on the field, you sit back and marvel, making plays short right field.
Alomar diving to his left, has it, backhanded flip, in time. Another one to the highlight reel.
What's more, no second baseman in the decade had a better batting average, more RBIs, or a higher OPS than Alomar.
This ball hit high and deep to right field. Gonzalez already turning and watching this one go into the upper porch.
He finished second among second sackers in hits and runs scored in the 90s and led the league in '99 with 138 runs. It was a Hall of Fame decade for Roberto Alomar. He was one of the biggest first basemen of the 90s, and Frank Thomas was also one of the most intimidating. For the man they called the Big Hurt inflicted pain on pitchers in oh so many ways.
He was a home run hitter, obviously, because he hit 500 plus home runs, but he was a good hitter first.
One of the best swings in all of baseball.
That became apparent in his 60-game rookie year of 1990, when he hit .330 with a .983 OPS.
He's got his first one. He's got his first one way back. Put it on the board. His first major league homer.
Most people thought big guys like me was just a home run guy, but that wasn't my goal or my plan.
He was a guy that was an average hitter,
as far as hitting 340, 350, but hit 40 home runs and drive in 120 and would take a walk.
How do you put this guy out?
In fact, only two players, Barry Bonds and Frank Thomas, averaged 30 home runs, 100 RBIs, and 100 walks for all 10 years.
Frankie do a lot of things then. I don't think too many people can do that. 100 RBI, 100 walks, 30 home runs.
From the Chicago White Sox.
The five-time All-Star was a unique blend of power and plate discipline.
Way back. Oh, Lord, let's watch this one. Into the fountain.
And that led him to be compared to the great Ted Williams.
I'm sure there's tons of numbers that back up that argument. There's been many years where both of those guys had similar numbers.
Not to mention that they were both two-time MVPs, with Frank just the sixth American leaguer to win them back-to-back in '93 and '4.
Big Hurt can lay it on you.
In addition, Frank's slugging percentage and OPS in '94 were the highest in the AL since Teddy Ballgame in '57. Fact is, the Big Hurt led the AL in walks, on-base percentage, and OPS 3 times in the 90s. That put him in the top 3 in each of those categories for the decade. Frank Thomas is our first baseman of the 90s. Any questions? We now return to Prime 9, where this week we're featuring the all-1990s team. These are players who excelled throughout the entire decade. 2 or 3 exceptional seasons were simply not enough to make the cut. So now it's time for numbers 1 and 2, the best catcher and pitcher from the 1990s. We begin behind the plate with number 2.
Piazza showed the tremendous power.
The story is often told how Mike Piazza only made it to pro ball because the Dodgers drafted him in the 62nd round as a favor to family friend Dodgers manager Tommy Lasorda.
He wasn't drafted as a favor. He was drafted because I wanted him drafted. We have a youngster by the name of Michael Piazza. This guy's got power and he can become a marquee player.
And Mike wasted no time with a Rookie of the Year performance in '93.
Home runs by a rookie catcher in Major League Baseball history.
Even as a rookie, he seemed to be very polished and very confident in what he brought to the table.
And those kinds of numbers continued throughout the decade, despite the fact that Mike played the most demanding position in all of baseball.
The wear and tear of a catcher is just indicative of what's not supposed to happen, and what's not supposed to happen is high averages, high numbers.
Mike's season for the ages in 1997 was spectacular.
The year that Mike Piazza had in 1997, a .362 batting average as a catcher.
A monster year and his final full season as a Dodger. For by late May of '98, he was a New York Met, much to the delight of his new mates.
I remember talking to my good friend John Franco. We were like 2 little kids, like fans, like, we got Mike Piazza. To know what he meant to the National League at that time.
This one's deep to center field, and Piazza leads the Astrodome. Wow, man.
Mike closed out the decade in New York by earning 7 All-Star nods and 7 Silver Slugger awards in the 90s.
It's total consistency. The power numbers were consistent. The batting average was consistent. He had power second to none.
He knew it was gone as soon as he hit it.
And when all was said and done, he owned all 3 Triple Crown categories for catchers in the decade.
Pound for pound, there is nobody in baseball stronger than Mike Piazza.
Strike 3 call. There's your ball game. Greg Maddux.
Got it. What a job. He's the best, folks.
The professor, that's what I call Greg Maddux. To face Greg Maddux and see him with those glasses on, and I thought he was nerdy birdie.
Ah, but this professor was at the top of his class.
For a pitcher that was not a power pitcher, you have to have perfection.
3 pitches, U-turn.
In the school of pitching smarts, Greg was a fast learner.
Maddux, though, you go straight from kindergarten to the master's program.
I think there's no question that what made Greg Maddux the pitcher that he was just how smart he was.
Nobody does it better in the National League than Greg Maddux.
Not in the 90s, that's for sure, as Greg led all pitchers in 4 key categories. Maddox was a Cub for 3 seasons in the 90s, and his last one began a stretch in which he won 4 straight Cy Young Awards, the final 3 with Atlanta.
Low and away, and there it is.
In 94 and 95, he posted 2 of the 4 highest ERA plus seasons since 1901.
You know, the thing about Greg Maddux in 1995, he never made a bad pitch. Not one.
Mike would win 18 Gold Gloves in his career, including one in every year of the 90s. The only pitcher ever to sweep a decade.
And self-defense to it.
He didn't let hitters pull the ball or hit the ball the opposite way. He wanted balls hit right back up the middle in that little wedge from home plate out to short and second.
What a play by Maddox.
That's why he's the best pitcher in the game.
And certainly the best of the 90s. Although Greg Maddux was our pitcher of the 90s, he didn't have the most strikeouts in the decade. That total of 2,538 went to Randy Johnson. Mark Grace had the most hits in the 90s with 1,754.
Holy cow! Mark Grace came through.
Mark McGwire blasted 405 home runs.
Into the upper tank, are you kidding me?
Albert Bell had the most RBIs in the decade with 1,099. John Wetland had the most saves with 295. And no one in the 90s had more steals than Otis Nixon with 478. Almost all of these men stood above the rest in one special category in the 90s. Except, that is, for being the very best at their position. That's our Prime 9. What